Most people lose arguments before they even open their mouth. Not because they're not smart, but because they're playing the wrong game. You've probably felt this before, walking away from a conversation frustrated, replaying it in your head, thinking of all the perfect things you should have said. Hours later, suddenly you're a genius, but it's too late. Here's the truth no one tells you. Winning an argument has very little to do with being right. In fact, some of the people who win the most arguments aren't the smartest in the room, they're just the most strategic. They understand something deeper. Arguments are not battles of logic, they are battles of psychology. And once you see this, everything changes. After studying countless debates, real-life conversations, and the patterns behind who wins and who loses, there are 6 powerful methods that consistently give people the upper hand. These are not obvious tricks. Most people never realize they exist, which is exactly why they work so well. In this video, you're going to discover all 6 and, more importantly, how to actually use them in real situations. Because once you shift from trying to be right to learning how to win, you'll never look at arguments the same way again. Method 1 is surprisingly simple, but incredibly powerful. Agree first. When someone attacks your idea, your instinct is to defend yourself immediately. But that reaction is exactly what creates tension and turns a conversation into a fight. Instead, you do the opposite. You acknowledge their point. For example, if someone says, "That idea doesn't make sense," instead of arguing back, you respond with, "You might be right about that part. I can see why it sounds off." Then you calmly add, "But there's one thing I'm not sure about," and shift into your perspective. This small move completely changes the dynamic. They expected resistance, but got agreement. Their guard drops. Psychologically, this signals confidence you're not threatened, so you don't need to fight. And when people feel heard, they become more open to listening. What's really happening here is subtle. By agreeing partially, you position yourself as reasonable, not defensive. And once the emotional tension is gone, logic has a chance to actually land. Instead of 2 people clashing, it becomes a shared exploration. That's why this method works so well. It disarms before it persuades. Method 2 is where things start to get really powerful. The question trap. Instead of telling someone they're wrong, you guide them to realize it themselves. This idea goes all the way back to Socrates, and it still works today because of one simple truth. People trust conclusions they arrive at on their own, far more than anything you tell them. Let's say someone claims, "People with high grades always succeed in their careers." Most people would jump in and argue directly. But instead, you ask, "Do you think grades always reflect real-world skills?" Then follow up with, "What about people who are creative or good with people, but didn't do well in school?" Notice what's happening. You're not attacking, you're exploring, but each question gently exposes a gap in their logic. Now their brain has to work. And as they start thinking through your questions, they begin to see the flaws themselves. This is the key. When someone convinces themselves, they don't feel defeat, they feel enlightened. There's no ego clash, no need to defend. You're not the enemy anymore. You're just the person asking thoughtful questions. Psychologically, this removes resistance completely. Instead of pushing against you, they start collaborating with you. And by the time they reach the conclusion, it feels like their idea, not yours. That's why the question trap is so effective. It turns disagreement into self-discovery. Method 3 is all about language because the words you choose can completely change how your argument is received. 2 people can make the exact same point, but one starts a fight while the other starts a conversation. That difference often comes down to a few small word swaps. For example, instead of saying, "You're wrong," say, "I'm having trouble following that logic." Before, direct attack. After, personal reaction. One makes them defensive, the other keeps the discussion open. Instead of, "That makes no sense," try, "I feel confused by that conclusion." It sounds softer, but it is often more effective because it lowers resistance. Another powerful swap is using words that imply common sense. Compare these 2 lines. "I think saving money is important," versus, "Obviously, saving money matters." The second sounds stronger, more certain, and more persuasive. Words like clearly, naturally, and of course subtly frame your point as reasonable before the other person even evaluates it. Then there are agreement-building questions. Instead of jumping straight into your main point, ask something like, "Wouldn't you agree that health should come first?" Questions like this are hard to reject, so the other person begins nodding before your real argument even arrives. That's why these word swaps matter so much. They don't just change your sentence, they change the emotional tone, the perceived confidence, and the direction of the entire conversation. Method 4 is what you use when you want to completely overwhelm the other side, the information bomb. Instead of arguing point by point, you flood the conversation with so much data, examples, and references that their brains simply can't keep up. Imagine someone challenges your idea. Instead of responding with one reason, you say, "Well, have you looked at the latest data? There's a 23% failure rate. Experts have already warned about long-term risks. And current market trends are showing the same pattern." You stack point after point, quickly and confidently. Now, here's what happens psychologically. Their brain tries to process everything at once, but it can't. The conversation starts to feel one-sided. They miss details, lose track, and begin to feel outmatched. And when people feel like they're falling behind, they often stop arguing altogether. The key insight is this: you don't need every detail to be perfect. You just need enough information to create the impression of authority and depth. When someone believes you know more than they do, they start questioning their own position. In many cases, they won't even try to respond because it feels like there's too much to fight against. Method 5 is simple but incredibly effective: the rule of 3. Human brains are wired to see patterns of 3 as complete, balanced, and trustworthy. 1 reason feels weak, 2 feels unfinished. But 3 feels convincing. So instead of giving just one argument, always structure your point in 3s. For example, this plan will save money, improve efficiency, and reduce risk. Or, I disagree for 3 reasons. It's too expensive, the timing is wrong, and the results aren't guaranteed. Notice how much stronger that sounds. It feels organized, prepared, and well thought out even if the ideas themselves are simple. That's the power of structure. Another advantage is clarity. When you present 3 points, people can easily follow your logic without getting lost. It creates a natural rhythm that makes your argument easier to process and remember. Most people only give 1 or 2 ideas and stop. But when you consistently use 3, you instantly stand out. You sound more confident, more professional, and more persuasive without actually saying anything more complicated. Method 6 is the ultimate weapon, the conversation killer. This is the moment where you don't just argue better, you end the argument completely. And the secret isn't long explanations or complicated logic. It's one short, sharp line, delivered at exactly the right time. Here's what makes it powerful. Most arguments drag on because people keep adding more and more points. But the conversation killer does the opposite. It cuts straight to the core flaw in the other person's logic so clearly that everyone can see it instantly. For example, if someone confidently gives advice they've never actually applied, you calmly respond, "That's interesting. Have you ever done that yourself?" Or, if they're defending a strategy they don't follow, you say, "If it works so well, why aren't you using it?" Simple, direct, hard to escape. Another example, when someone speaks with fake authority, you might say, "You sound very confident for something you just learned 5 minutes ago." It's not about being rude, it's about exposing inconsistency. And when that inconsistency becomes obvious, the argument collapses on its own. Timing is everything here. You don't interrupt or rush, you wait. Let them talk, let them overextend, let them commit to a weak point. Then you step in calm, controlled, precise. No emotion, no aggression, just clarity. That's what creates the wow moment. The room goes quiet. They pause, and suddenly, they have nothing left to say. When used correctly, this method doesn't just win the argument, it ends it completely. Here's what truly separates amateurs from pros. They don't rely on just one technique, they combine them. Most people learn a trick and try to use it everywhere. But real mastery comes from knowing when to switch, when to blend, and when to hold back. Think of it like this. You start with the agreement trick to lower their guard and make them feel heard. Then you move into the question trap to gently guide their thinking. Once you present your point, you structure it using the rule of 3 so it sounds complete and convincing. If they push back hard, you bring in the information bomb to overwhelm and regain control. And when the perfect moment appears, you finish with a conversation killer. This flow turns a simple discussion into a controlled strategy. But here's the deeper layer: adaptation. Every person is different. Some people respond well to logic, others react emotionally, some get defensive quickly, while others stay open. If you use the wrong method on the wrong person, even the best technique can fail. That's why you have to read the room. Pay attention to tone, body language, and reactions. Are they tense or relaxed, curious or defensive, talking fast or slowing down? These signals tell you which approach to use next. At the highest level, winning arguments isn't about memorizing techniques, it's about flexibility. The ability to adjust in real time, switch strategies smoothly, and stay in control no matter how the conversation shifts. That's what makes someone truly unstoppable. At the end of the day, winning an argument isn't about proving you're right, it's about understanding how people think. When you stop trying to fight and start learning how to guide the conversation, everything changes. You become calmer, more confident, and far more effective. Remember the core ideas. Agree before you challenge, ask instead of attack, choose your words carefully, structure your points clearly, and use timing to your advantage. And when the moment is right, end the conversation with precision, not emotion. But here's the most important part. Knowing these techniques is not enough. You have to practice them. Start small. Pick just one method, maybe the agreement trick or the question trap, and try it in your next conversation. Get comfortable with it. Notice how people respond. Then, over time, add more tools to your arsenal. Because the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. And eventually, you won't just be someone who argues, you'll be someone who controls the entire conversation.